Hi everyone, Happy New Year and welcome to the very first Alpine Story Winter Series edition of 2021. And these talks are all about bringing you a bit of inspiration and adventure into your homes through these challenging times. And I'm delighted to welcome Sally tonight. She's got an excellent, not quite so alpine, but certainly adventurous story to share with us. So I can't wait for that. I'm just going to give a quick introduction and then we'll get started. Just want to say a little bit about who we are. Lizzie, can you forward me on, please? Brilliant, thank you. So we're a community dedicated towards helping women achieve their alpine dreams. And we do that in a number of different ways. So we have interesting talks like these, we have inspiring articles, blogs, and knowledge videos on our website. And also when we can, we like to get together in person and have events, both summer and winter, where we meet new adventure buddies and also develop our alpine skills. So that's us. I'm just going to say a little bit about etiquette and what we do. You will have noticed that when you all came in, we muted your mics and your videos, and that's just so that it's not too confusing for the speaker, so that they can just focus on what they need to say without any background noise, etc. But in our question and answer session at the end, which we'll have plenty of time for, we will encourage you to raise your hands digitally so that you can ask questions. And if you feel comfortable doing so and asking in person, then you're very welcome to turn on your videos and your mics and we can see you in person and have a proper chat. But Jenny will talk you through how we do the Q&A session at the end. You can also put your question in a chat. So if you're feeling a bit shy, but you still want to ask a question, then you can feel free to do so there. And just a note to say that all the talks are recorded and we're currently in Facebook Live in our private group, just so that you're all aware. And welcome and Happy New Year. And I'm going to hand over to Jenny, who's going to introduce Sally.
Thanks, Louise. Yeah, so we're thrilled to have Sally Lisle with us this evening. Sally is a mountaineering instructor, currently based in North Wales. She runs a company called Far Right Pursuits, which there are details at the end of the talk about. Sally is an incredibly inspiring person to spend time with out on the hill and climbing, and she really makes you feel like you can achieve everything that you want and makes you kind of feel your best self. So we're so thrilled that she agreed to talk with us this evening about one of her adventures in Mexico, a new talk. So we're very honoured to have that. Sally's also written a couple of articles on our website about her alpine adventures this summer, because she was very lucky to make the break over into Switzerland and do some mountaineering there. So if you're interested about how to do alpine mountaineering in COVID times, do go onto our website and check them out. But in the meantime, sit back and enjoy Sally giving us a bit of warmth and sunshine, which is definitely needed at the moment in Mexico. So Sally, do you want to join us by turning on your video and your microphone, and we'll get cracking with your talk. Thank you.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, we can hear you.
I'm joining you from deepest, darkest North Wales into Norwich. So a minute amount of technical difficulties. So we've just been ironing out some details in the last half an hour. But we're going to go old school, I think. And Lizzie, my right-hand woman here, is going to do the old school of next and change slides for me. So please bear with us. I might not be able to see what you can see, so I might be talking in a random tangent, but I promise I'll come back to what you can see eventually. So thanks so much for such a lovely, lovely intro, Ginny. I guess it's quite useful to know where I come from. So the route I'm coming at from this trip and why I went on the trip and what I want to share about the trip and why it is that I want to share that. Because before I start, so why I instruct and why I play out in the outdoors is because it makes me feel like I can do anything. And the first time I felt like that, it was when I was 9 years old and somebody took me on a survival experience in Scotland. And since then, last 25 years, I've been trying to pass that on. So this, when Jenny asked me to talk, this is the trip that I wanted to talk about, because it is the biggest, most vibrant experience that I've had, that made me feel that my potential was way bigger than I realized. So that's why I want to talk about this. Next. So, disclaimer, I am the wild card, and yes, this is not an Alpine talk, but I've got some really good excuses as to why it's not, and why it's useful anyway. So if you're here because you want to know more about what you can do in Alpine settings, I think this trip does transfer, because the new routing that we did out in the middle of nowhere, it took 18 months of planning, which is quite similar. It was the weight of the decisions that we were making on the ground and the objective dangers that we had to navigate, and the importance of the team that I had around me are all really similar, transferable to that classic Alpine trip. So they're my excuses, and sit back and enjoy anyway. Thanks. Next. So I thought about talking through the process of how on earth I got to decide, hey, I'll go to the middle of nowhere in Mexico and put up a new route. So I was sat somewhere pretty similar to this, daydreaming and going, what do I really want to do next? I came up with this really big picture, what is the challenge? And bear with me, I came up with, I want to put up a new route on a peak that's never been climbed in Patagonia. So bear with me. I always find when you come up with a goal or a thing of what you want to do, it's worth working out why you want to do it. So I thought, okay, great idea. Why do I want to do that? And I thought, well, I'm an accomplished or a competent mountaineer now, so I want to give back to the climbing community. Next. When I dug a little bit deeper than that, I worked out that that is not why I wanted to do it. And I feel like that was really useful. So coming back to where I come from in my decisions of and my experiences, how I feel in the outdoors, is I really wanted to be able to go somewhere unarguably challenging, and I wanted to survive, and I wanted to stretch myself, make all the decisions that I was making be really important, and expand where I could look after myself and look after my team, and more than that, as always, expand where my comfort zone is, so where I can take my clients. But one step further, I didn't just want to survive, I wanted to thrive, so I wanted to put up a new route, and that's actually why I wanted to do it. Next. So once I'd worked that out, I then needed to work out if I could. And breaking it all down, I established quite quickly that I not yet was the answer. I was missing quite a few skills next. So I'd never been new routing. Next. I'd never been new routing. It was remote. It's consequential. I've got terrible circulation, and the weather in Patagonia is pretty horrendous at times. So if I'm working out all these consequential decisions, I really didn't want to be the first time that I did that. I didn't want to be somewhere where I needed to, part of my brain was managing my fingers not falling off, somewhere that I couldn't speak the language. And so there were quite a few steps I needed to take first. But I could either set up the skills I need to get, or I could combine my skills with teammates. So then the question is, which teammates next? So I had a few options really. I'd either join an expedition that's already going and be the competent assistant that could be taught, or I could go Chris Bonington style and drop the level of the challenge down, but I could direct other people and I could lead the expedition. Or what I actually opted to do was somewhere in the middle with the challenge and pick some peers that we could go together and we could puzzle out what we found on the ground and go forwards as that team. That's what I decided to do next. So these are the band of ragabonds next that I roped in to do this. So it's Kai, Will and me. It does look like we just stood on a ledge there, but this is the first belay we put in, and there's about 350 meters below us, all smiling, looking very happy on day one. The Will in the middle was a really obvious choice for me. We did our mountaineering instructor or mountaineering and climbing instructor training and worked towards our assessment together. We've been benighted, we've gone to the Alps, we've done trips. I trust him completely that he'll work out something safe. It might not be my solution, but it'll be a safe one, a good one. Kai was a totally different kettle of fish, and he's not obvious. It was much more the universe provided. The universe threw us together. And he was a photographer at my friend's wedding in Canada. And a few weeks later, when my friend, my climbing partner, missed her flight, we bumped into each other. And strangely enough, within half an hour, decided that we were definitely going to do really big things together, which was odd because he didn't have that much climbing experience at the time. He'd been trad climbing for a few months, but his attitude was so brilliant. He was somehow totally aware of what he didn't know and how he could learn it. And he's just so psyched and such a quick learner. It was just totally brilliant. So I think Will and I will have to work hard to keep up with him in the next few years. But that's okay too, we'll keep up somehow. The other thing about them is they are opinionated, amazing problem solvers that will disagree with me. And both of them, within about 10 minutes of being with them, I'm hurting from laughing so hard. So it's really useful if everything's getting a little bit too serious that they can, well, for me, that I care deeply about my my teammates and that I know they can pick me up. Next, it's my dream team. So next, I've roped in the right people. Next. Now we just need to research where on earth we're going to go. So this, I started everywhere. I was asking everyone next, and I was so asking everyone I could ask. I was reading trip reports, reading summit articles, contacting Facebook friend of whoever else. Kai's friend happened to bump into somebody, and so we just asked everybody, and I kind of thought, they might not want to tell us, but everyone we spoke to was really excited and really giving with the information that that they gave us. So we ended up choosing next where to go. We needed it to be warm, new route potential, and we needed to go in November because that's when we had time off. So hunting around, ended up Mexico, through a couple of people, found this valley in northern Mexico eventually, called La Huasteca. The cool thing about researching it a little bit more next was that we found out that the ethics around there was adventurous bolting, adventurous sport routes. So that was brilliant for me because, okay, we've reduced the challenge in some ways by we haven't got a glacier approach. We haven't got to sort these sorts of bits out, but we've got to bolt. And I don't know how to bolt. None of us knew how to bolt. None of us had ever been new routing. None of us knew how to bolt. So we had some skills to get learning before we could go out and put this up. Next, I then wanted to have a go at this here on a sort of smaller scale, just to check that what was the process was going to kind of work when we got out there. Next, and then the last tiny bits was get the kit and go, really. So next, it sounds so simple. Next. So as you can see on there, I'm going to point and assume that you can see where I'm pointing, but you definitely can't. There's in the top, there's a place called Monterey. There you go, lovely. And just in a bit from there is the other way, but that's fine. Is La Huasteca, which is 2 or 3 really long valleys of these huge spires of unclimbed walls of limestone waiting for you to go and put some new routes up, if you can fight through the cactuses. Next. So these new skills that we need to learn. Kai is transforming himself into the new Jimmy Chin. He's off in Squamish, dangling, setting up rigging. He's a professional photographer and now adventure photographer to capture all our beautiful what we're going to do. And I'm learning everything that is to know about bolts, of which there is a huge amount. If you ever get the chance, set aside 2 weeks of your life and go and have a look. So I'm a member of the Association of Mountaineering Instructors. So this is one tact I took, was I went on a CPD, a workshop for bolting on Anglesey. And Matt Smith, who's on the left of your screen, was running it, and there's a huge amount to learn. He runs a company called Go Vertical. Tess is in North Wales. It's amazing. He brought this huge test kit, pneumatic, of we placed the bolts there, and we then let it all set and tested how much force it took to take them out. And the rock would always break before the bolts would. We got up to something crackers that you could never produce. It was over 25 kilonewtons, pulling it out at right angles. So I took another approach as well because I wanted to learn from all sources. So press next. And before you press play, I'll tell you how I met this chap. So I wanted to learn everything about bolts because it didn't need to just be safe enough for me, just safe enough for us and the team going out there. But because we were putting up a route that I felt quite responsible for it, that I needed it to be as good as it possibly could be. So because somebody could turn up in 10 years' time, look at it and go, great, there's a route there, I'll go and climb it. And I wanted to make sure it was good enough. So this was a less formal, but I thought I'd take both approaches to learning what I needed to about bolts. I met this chap called Scott Titt. in a very similar way to the way I found Lizzie. We were just slightly inebriated in a climbers club hut in Cornwall, and Scott comes up to me and goes, "Sally!" And we've been friends ever since. And he happens to be an old boy that's taught himself everything. His brother actually runs a company, the biggest company in Europe, I think, for testing and manufacturing bolting products. So that's gym tip and bolting products. But Scott, while he's very rough around the edges, he's also the old president of the BMC. So I invited myself to his house for 3 days in Swanage, and he took us out and taught us so many things from years of experience. So if you just watch this is one of the things that he taught us, showed us how to test it.
Right now, go. Whoa, look at that! That's insane! That's ridiculously easy.
Oh, that is disgusting. Good.
What I said when you use the staple word. Can you now understand
Okay.
why spitting disgust at your use of the word staple? That's ridiculously rubbish.
So if I can take you back to when Matt Smith taught us about the resin bolts that we put in, and we tested them, and some of them would hold up to 50 kilonewtons, which is just crackers. And Will there has just taken this staple out basically by hand. And so if you press next, it's amazing that you just don't know what you don't know. So he showed us so many things.
Look at that! That's insane!
I can't quite see what's going on, but I'll find out in a minute. So it's amazing that you can't, it's difficult to know how rubbish a staple is without being told and taught. So if you get the chance, go and have a look. So next, can somebody tell me what you guys can see? Because at the moment I'm looking at the ground and a piece of metal.
That's for us. I think Lizzie's just trying to move
Sorry,
on
it's
to the next.
just there's some strange lag because at the moment I'm on the next slide, but for some reason it's playing the video again.
Oh, that's fine.
The gremlin has come in on this.
So long as you're with me, that's fine. So I'm just going to tell you what you might be able to see in a minute, hopefully. So what we opted for in the end, what made sense, was we needed the bolts to, as soon as we placed them, to be usable, so we couldn't use glue. So we ended up having some expansion bolts, and we had two different types of hangers, some plate hangers and some rod hangers, so that you could abseil directly off some of the bolts that we put in. So at the belays, we put these heavier, more expensive rod hangers in, so that you could have releasable abseils and you could escape from this route at any point. So, which was very convenient, the strategy we ended up with, because we had to weigh up how much is it going to cost? Is it going to be escapable for whoever ends up following us next in a few years? And are we going to be able to carry it up a mountain that we don't actually know where we're going to be and what the objective is yet? So, next. What can you guys see right now?
I'm really sorry, Sally, whatever gremlin was in there before with that really long delay is what we're experiencing now for whatever reason.
That's fine.
Yeah.
So I guess I'll just keep on talking. So we, when you see the next slide, you will be able to see what is when we've done all this final practice. I had one more test where I actually ended up going and practicing a bit small scale. So it was again the universe provided. And while I was doing a deep water solo in Devon, I met this chap called Lee, who was a really big new router. And so I went and he had a great idea of a route that we could go and do together so I could have a wee practice. So having a wee practice, what I actually meant by that was he told me a few options. And the one that really was like, yes, okay, let's have a wee test of that. And what it was a 2-pitch sea stack on the north coast of Cornwall that we swam out to at about 4 o'clock in the afternoon and set up. This is Lee himself. So when we finally we climbed it, we had a wee look at the where the line would go, which is really good practice for seeing a strategy that you could pick a line in the country. Next. There you go. You can see this is the sea stack, and if you press next, we climbed up the left-hand side of it, and we did eventually get to the top just for sunset, the beautiful sunset, which is a great plan when you're on a sea stack that you've never climbed before, because you can come down and in the full darkness swim back to the mainland. So a good wee test of our skills, and we called it, if you press next a couple of times, we called it a dream of cloud horses, because the whole time, the whole of the day, the sky had just been a little bit wild and dancing. So a 2-pitch E1 5A that hopefully nobody will ever go and repeat. Next. So then getting the last bits of kit, once again, like asking everyone for where you should go, you should ask everybody, tell everyone pass on the excitement. So these are the people that agreed to support us either financially or with products, and we thank them very, very much. So take those amazing photos, write those articles, whatever it takes to go and have these adventures and share it with people. Next. Beautiful. Thank you very much, dear Mem, for those beautiful quick draws. Next. So we finally got out to Mexico after 18 months of planning. Next. And this is when I realised, when we were in the airport in the middle of the night, that Will and Kai had never actually met each other. So conveniently, when they did, they got on really well. So that was very useful. Next, we made it out to our accommodation and got set up next. And so it's this hut in the middle of nowhere. And if you see just above the thatched roof, unbeknownst to us at the time or Kai of finding some accommodation for us, this is the only place we could stay in the valley. Just above the roof is actually ended up being Pico Negro, which was our objective for the task. So pretty convenient for us. And we were the only people in it, so it was ideal to spread out, look at each other going, what are we doing? What are we doing next? Next. And then we drove around up and down the valleys, gazing up at what is going to tempt us in, and testing out some of the routes that were already there in the valley, seeing how they are working, how far are the bolts spaced, what works, what doesn't. And we drove around everywhere, but we always came back to this one face. Next and play. and hopefully this won't create gremlins, but this is that big black wall is what we saw every day, just gazing, calling us up into the valley from down below, and it was just intimidating enough. But there was a key part of it. If you can see the ridge to the left-hand side of the peak, there in this guidebook of, there were 2 guidebooks to the whole of Mexico. In this one guidebook, there was a 5-7 that went up the ridge, which is about Sevilla. So we knew that there was a way to get to the summit. Someone had been up it before, which meant that we could place the bolts, or theoretically, we could place the bolts whilst hanging on a rope. So we could go from the top downwards, plan what we were going to do, and place the bolts, which meant that we could create something quite nice. We could clean it, make it safe, and put the bolts where you could clip it well. So it was really important, especially to Kai, I think, that you create something quite beautiful and worthwhile for us. So next. So with this information, we still hadn't decided that this was our objective. Kai had taken photos of all of these different objectives that we could do. This is the one that kept on going, oh, it looks scary. But we hadn't decided, and we took all of these photos to the local group called Escalada Libre, and we go, which was really lovely to meet them. They were really surprised that we would actually get in touch, and really grateful, because most people kind of just come and do whatever they want to do. But for us to have come and asked them, what's the ethics? What are you planning on doing? What's the right thing? What do you think of this? They were just so generous with sharing their knowledge. And it was fantastic. They had mixed reactions with this. They were all really excited that we wanted to climb it. And it turns up that there was one route up the face already. Press next. And the old boy of Escalada Libre, who was definitely the wad that knew what he was doing when it came to new routing, just magicked this topo out of nowhere. And so they talked to us, they said, well, it works, and excited that we'd want to go and do it, but also very conscious that we had 12 days by this stage, and it's north facing, and we're very close to the equator, and we had a ginger, and so we had all these things against us. That would we actually make it? So if you can see the picture on the left, to actually get to the base of the route, it takes hours. You fight your way up through a cactus jungle, and then you get into a dried out riverbed, which is full of poison ivy, which attacked me savagely, probably just because of my karma, because I was laughing so hard at Will having an issue with the cactus. So then we battered around at the bottom of the crag below the main face, finding where on earth the lower pitches start. Eventually, hours later, found the bottom of the route. 5 pitches of climbing, and then about 250 meters of scrambling, rope scrambling. Hurrah! We've made it to the bottom of the route. And off the bottom of the route, it's about, I guess, the middle of the day, hot, and we've not really got much water left. It's my pitch, and it's the crux. So good start. I remember teetering up this route, which looked really, really chossy. And I finally got past the bits that looked really crumbly and got onto the sledge and clipped a bolt, which oh, that's a really bad place for a bolt. I better not fall off this next bit. because I'll hit that ledge. And I looked up and went, oh, it looks significantly more solid than what I've just climbed. Pulled up, and the hole exploded. And so there we go. I flipped upside down and had what I used to call the worst fall I've had. I went through a cactus upside down and slammed into the wall really hard. They lowered me down and like, yeah, it's definitely your turn. But after a wee bit, it was the only way down was the tail. The only way off was a tail between legs escape, back down the scramble, back down the 5 pitches, poisoned ivy, whole forest. Definite utter failure on that route. So then we decided it was definitely a goer. From that, which sounds outrageous just saying it like that, but the information we had actually gathered was, okay, the rock is loose. It is hard work, but we're going to be bolting it from the top down. The people who had put up that route had bolted on leads, so they hadn't cleaned it. So we could clean it from the top down. Because we'd gone and spoken to the locals, they knew a route up the back, so we could get to the back. The climbing should be just at our limit, and the time it would take us to do it, we should be able to do it in a time frame. So climbing should work. We can get to the top. We know how to get to the bottom now, so it is just about the right level. We wanted challenge, ability, time frame, and they're all kind of like, yes, all right, that's the one, committed. Next. So we got our last little bits because, surprise, surprise, we forgot our machetes on the plane. Next. Last few bits. Yeah, well equipped, crowbars, everything to clean everything. Next. And we set off. So Kai took this amazing photo of the face with his mega lens, and we came back to it all the time. Will had borrowed a drone, and so we were just trying all these different tactics to work out where we might go, how we might do the route, what to do next. So you can see that we've got little circles on it. So we've drawn on it of super zoomed in where the line might go, where the best climbing, where the ledges might be to have nice relays. And so that was our plan. So each day we would start from the valley floor, climb up past the past some diggers, I'm not sure what they were doing, into a forest of cactus, and through that onto this boulder field, up the back, up this horrendous scree slope. Then we would just about get to the ridge, come on up and get to the summit. Next. So it looks, some days when you got to the ridge, it looked like that. Next. And so you can see us climbing all the way up. This was, by this point, we hadn't got to the summit yet. We climbed each morning with all the things we needed to get to the top, because, okay, it's easier to create something beautiful by bolting on the way down, but you've got to carry all the stuff up to the top. So that is hundreds of meters of rope, hundreds of bolts, drills, batteries, with tens of liters of water all the way up. And so it's 900 meters before you get to start your day's work. And so you finally get to the top. Ding, next. Again, some days you got blessed with a view like that. and some days it was sideways rain, which was totally bonkers. It could be one day we're going to fry alive, we're not going to have enough water. One day, let's get off before that thunder comes. Next. So this is us on day one. I did work out what I was doing, but along the way. So bolting the first one and next. So each time we would abseil into the oblivion, find out where we could put our next belay. So we had an idea from looking at the photos, from having a quick go with the drone, which didn't really work after a while. But we had an idea of where we might go, but we'd abseil into the abyss, find it, and then clean the route next. So once we bolted the belay below us, we'd fix that line, and we'd try to take the loose rock off, and then it would be a job to try and test the moves next, and then mark out where the best places for the bolts would be, and put some bolts in, have a go next. And then once you've done that, jug all the way back to the summit. Next, when we're running out of daylight, and every single day bar one, we'd be on the summit, going, great, okay, back down we go, and we go all the way back, down the ridge, down the screw slope, over the boulder field, and back into camp. And at the camp, it was one of the really lovely things about this trip. We'd always sit down to a dinner, and one of us would be doing the hosting for the others, and we'd have this puzzle out of what are we gonna do? How many pictures are we gonna bolt tomorrow? How are we gonna make it better? And that sort of refresh. And then next, we do it all over again, and repeat and repeat and repeat. And each time we just drastically underestimated how long it would take each factor, until we got sort of it was sort of 3 days from the end, and we tested some more lines and tested some more of the bolting. We got the first time we bolted, and we found that actually when we tested climbing them, not on a rope or not on a fixed line, that actually the bolts weren't adventurously bolted. They were flipping miles apart. And so the day before, so we had 2 days left. It ended up that we only had one drill, so my pictures were the worst. I was the worst culprit for this. I placed the boys put where they thought they needed their extra bolts, and I placed, I think, 18 more bolts on that last day, while the other two scooted all the way to the bottom because we've cleaned the route, and they were working the crux pitch, which was the very first one, and having a nice time. And they were going to then meet me just an hour before sunset. We get some really cool photos, and then we go down, tea, medals, and nail the first descent the next day. But we may have underestimated how long everything would have taken. And so when they made it to the summit and to join me for 4.5 hours after we agreed, in the dark, obviously, we then sort of sat there going, how close are we? We've got to be at the airport in 36 hours. How close are we doing this? okay. And part of me was like, well, I've gained what I needed to gain. I wanted to learn. I wanted to sort of work towards this. How about how about I can just convince my two friends that we shouldn't do the first descent at all. We could just go cragging and have a really nice day, and that would be fine. But I didn't actually voice it. We sat there in the dark for about 10 minutes, eating some food and working out as usual. Okay, so how are we going to make this work? And we worked it out that okay, we hadn't got enough time to do it the way we planned, but once again, great, we would go back up the route we knew to the summit. We'd leave 150 meters of fixed line at the top to speed our descent, and then abseil the next 200 meters to get to the bottom of our route. We wouldn't battle up from the bottom. And so that would save us some time. And then we figured that we don't have enough time for each of us to free each pitch. There's no way. So one of us would free each pitch. And that's how we were gonna just about make it happen. So we got down it's 1 in the morning, we got back. And look, we're like, okay, when do we need to start? Work backwards. Great. We've got 3 hours of sleep, set off at 4 in the morning, ready to rumble. Next. Believe it or not, we didn't actually take very many photos on the day of the ascent. Next, but we did manage it. The moment for me, we got to the bottom of the pitch, the bottom of the route by bang on 9 o'clock as we planned, and there's crux pitch there, and these two, Kai and Will, had already tried it the day before, and they were like, "You've got to do it! You've got to do it! It's amazing!" And we're like, "We haven't got enough time, but yes, okay." And so it worked out being about 5:12B, which is about 7B, which is, or certainly was at the time, my kind of limit of how hard I could climb. And we'd just been doing 10 days of manual labor. So I was totally buggered. I've never tried so hard climbing in all my life. And it was euphoric getting to the belay. But unfortunately, it did mean that I'd been in these rock boots on this south-facing wall for a really long time. So by about pitch 6, 7, my feet were crippled, and I had to take my pride out of it again and go, right, I'm just going to drag myself after you guys. My feet had been in those boots on those tiny limestone edges for just that little bit longer, and so I dragged myself after the boys. And Will, and this next one, click. Next, sorry. Did this beautiful traverse, pulling it all out of the bag, and then next we finally made it to the belay at the top, and this was where Kai had brought us up to this across this wildly bold slab, his first bolt that he'd ever put in any rock. So obviously nicely wide apart, just to keep the epic of adventure in the complete pitch dark. And we got back here, which is where we knew we'd done it by this stage, because it eased off. And when we finally got to the top, heroically made it back down, we had a full, easy peasy 6 hours to make it to the airport. So it was perfect. Stumbling back into camp, we made ourselves share a beer together, 1 beer between the 3 of us, and made pancakes instead of going to sleep. And then just went to the airport, and we called it Eterno Optimista next, which just named after our infinite ability to underestimate how long everything took in the new routing process. Next. So, have a look at Eterno Optimista.
Salió la toma, por fin. Oye, la ruta sigue y sigue y sigue.
Sí, pues son después de 45,
So that was really convenient timing for, because this was Hernan from Escalada Libre and Carlos, I think. They climbed it only a couple of weeks ago and sent us this footage. So it's really cool that we got in touch with them, and they enjoyed it. It was great. Next. So things to take away from this. Next. I think everybody should go adventuring, because it doesn't have to be new routing, doesn't have to be alpine climbing, doesn't have to be, and it can be whatever you define adventuring to be, but you should go and do it. Next. So with adventuring comes uncertainty, hopefully. And I really like that slight having to work out what you need to do and not completely knowing. So embrace being uncomfortable and working it out. You'll never know if you don't push yourself, this feeling of knowing how vast your potential is. So go and push yourself. Next. I talked about these ones. I think this is really worthwhile, working out your motivation behind what your goals are, so that you can make sure that you achieve what you need, what you want. Next. We've talked about this one already, but it's worthwhile balancing challenge and ability and keeping yourself safe. Next. Really valuable. If you are in a good headspace and you are open, then somehow you'll meet the right person. Somehow you'll stumble across the book that you need at that exact moment. And all you just need to do is just keep your eyes open. Next. Very, very important for me. Make sure you go with the people you want to spend time with, that you care about and that will look after you, and that are more important, for me, more important than whatever your objective is. It makes all the difference for me. Next. Got a few thanks. Thanks to the people who made it possible financially to get out there. Next. Thanks to Matt and Scott for teaching me the vast quantity, onslaught of information. Next, for bolting. How welcoming the Mexican group of developers and climbers was is astounding. Next. Kai's obviously as you've seen, spectacular photography. And last but very much not least, both Kai and Will for agreeing to come in the first place. Thank you. And thank you guys for listening to me get excited about my trip. Any questions?
Amazing. Thanks so much, Sally. That was such a great talk. And thanks for bearing with us with all the technology gremlins as well. I think they must be jumping forth back between Bristol and North Wales. So yeah, that was great. So if you do have any questions for Sally, anything that popped up or any questions, you know, about new routing or traveling or any of the other cool things that she's done, you can either raise your hand and turn on your screen and microphone and ask her yourself. If you go down to the participants button at the bottom, there's a thing that says raise hand, and then we'll know that you want to ask a question. Or if you want to ask a question by putting it in the chat, then just write it in there and then I'll see them pop up and ask them to Sally as well. So either way, do ask your questions. So I was just thinking when you were describing your approach to the bottom of the cliff, Sally, it reminded me of our day in Clywith where we didn't actually manage to find the bottom of the route, but at least there weren't any cactuses, so that made me laugh.
There was brownie. So
there was brownie, yeah, it's always a great ingredient for a trip. So I think one of the things that always strikes me with new routing is looking from afar, because you know you couldn't get actually that close to the cliff at start, and picking out where the line would go, where the route would go, and how do you on earth do you know what standard the climbing grade is going to be? How do you what features do you look for when you're looking for where a route might go?
Okay, so with that, the beautiful the start of that question is you don't know, which is quite brilliant. In like an alpine climb, you might get up and you might go, we can't do that, and you'll have to make the decision of we can't do it. And I think that's really valuable. But the things to look at for me when you stood back, it's actually you kind of just get it from a lot of experience of climbing, and a lot of, especially if you were back in the days where you'd read, you wouldn't have this huge guidebook that you open out and on your coffee table and you've got all the pictures everywhere. You've got 2 paragraphs of go to the obvious block and climb the groove to the slightly less obvious groove, and you go. So you kind of just get a sense of what you can and can't climb from stood below things. But from far away, you're looking for lines of weakness. It depends if you need them, what the kind of rock is as well. If you need it to take gear, then you definitely need lines of weakness. Then if you look at from one side, you can see the angle of the cliff as well, and vegetation. So if there's vegetation, then it's got to be in something, so a crack. So that's how we started.
Okay, that's great, thank you. Just seeing that Sean H has raised their hand. If you want to turn on your video and mic, Sean, you can ask your question. Hopefully that'll pop up.
Perfect. Yeah, hopefully you can hear me. I'm kind of listening while working from home. But yeah, thanks for the chat, Sally. I'm a buddy of Kai's in Vancouver here. I'm just wondering what is next. So I had known a bit about this trip already, obviously, but what is coming up next on your schedule, or in the coming year or two or more?
It's a really tough, really difficult question, I think, because everyone has to be really quite flexible with travel destinations. So I guess lots of things. I'm talking to Kai next week about what our next objectives should be and getting planning on some big missions. One day we'll be in Yosemite. one day we'll be in Pakistan, one day we've got all of these ideas. But I just think this year coming up, I'm really excited about being in North Wales and the trad lines here. And some of the best climbing in the world is North Wales. So being around here and just being excited, moving on, developing my business a bit as well. Sort of takes it, so it's sort of my own climbing objectives, my own business objectives at the same time. So I would really like to go to Jordan as well. So maybe we'll throw that in there as well.
Awesome. Yeah, thanks. Yeah, it's tricky right now. Obviously, stoked about international adventures, but trying to divert that stoke locally.
Yeah, absolutely.
Great. Thanks very much for coming on and asking that question. That's fantastic. We've got one from Svetlana in the chat saying, thanks for the amazing talk. When she was wondering if you're setting up the route, when you kind of decided what you were doing and starting to bolt it, did you have to ask permission to people? Do you have to register it, especially as you're bolting the cliff? And I guess that fits into something I was wondering as well, around the ethics of fitting into the ethics of the area as well.
It's going to be totally different whichever area that you go to. So we were really careful in that. We went and we sort of found out who vaguely owned it. And in another useful reason of why that was particularly useful for us is to make sure that it wasn't the mafia. And yes, there are people to ask permission of, if in some places, but in that one it was just making sure we found the local climbers, and technically we didn't have to
should be now.
Technically we didn't have to ask for anyone, but we did anyway, just to
Got it.
Yes. Other places you absolutely
Okay.
need to ask permission, especially in the UK. There's lots of crags that are owned by different people, and so the BMC, the British Mountaineering Council, go and negotiate terms, and it's much better if you're in the UK to develop it, is going and approaching your local BMC rep, and they'll talk to the access person, and they'll go and approach the landowner. It's sort of a lot more. There's a more straightforward way of doing it in Britain, I suppose, but it's different everywhere else in the world, and you just have to be properly thorough and respectful, I think, to do it. And it'll come back to you, because there is no way in the time frame that we had, if we hadn't actually contacted the local climbing group, there is no way that we would have been able to achieve it, I don't think. So while it was originally just it was mainly to be proper, I can't think of the word, but to be respectful, it turned out to be incredibly useful as well. So just hunt around, ask.
Thank you. Alison asks, well, she says Mexico looks amazing. Is it a good venue to go on a climbing trip to do some pre-existing routes? Is the rock good? You said there were only 2 guidebooks for the whole of Mexico, but did you do any cragging whilst you were over there?
We did a bit of we did 1 day of cragging, and then because we had organised it really well, Will flew back and had Kai and I had 5 days at the end of the trip left, where it was just us, and we were back in Mexico. So about a week and a half before we flew out there, Kai just went, there's a volcano, Pico de Orizaba, you want to climb that? and this was the point where the universe just happened to stumble into just trusting it was perfect. So there are mountaineering objectives, there is good cragging, where when Kai mentioned that to me, I was like, yes, definitely, I would love to do that. The next person I spoke to I was working with in the Avon Fee in a gorge in North Wales, and going, we just decided to do this volcano, and she used to guide on this particular volcano, so she knew all the contacts, which we then messaged, who then picked us up from our hotel. And so yes, it was really good. It was absolutely spectacular. The 5 days in itself of climbing Pico de Orizaba would take a whole other presentation to tell you about. It was such a special little trip. But there's also this, there's 2 other venues that are really well known for cragging, which is Puerto Chico, which is the most common one, and that's in northern Mexico as well. And then there's another big, and that's limestone as well. Really common for, it's sort of like Spain distance for folks from the US. So lots of people fly in there. But there's also a big granite blob closer to Mexico City, which has been bolted as well. So have a hunt. It's either Mexico City or that area of Monterey. There's another area that's developed, or a very adventurous routing further north and further west, but I wouldn't go there because there's lots of drug issues. So yeah, careful.
Good tips there. Avoid the mafia at all costs.
The mafia. Very strange planning a trip and going, oh, we can't do that.
So last question from Danny in the chat says, once again, a brilliant talk from Sally, so inspired as always. When the route is bolted, how do you advertise it? How do people find out about new bolted routes that people do? How does that work?
Well, that was the kind of weird thing, because when this peak had already been climbed, the face had already been climbed, and the only evidence of it was this chap had a random piece of paper. So in the UK, it's I think now, it used to be that you'd walk into Pete's Eats and there would be a little book that you'd write it in. But nowadays, it's either messaging the guidebook writers. So the Climbers Club do a lot of guidebook writing, and I submit things that are worthwhile to them. But also UKC, you send it to them, the moderators. So it depends where you are again. So we passed it on. Mim, Will's girlfriend, and Will made this really beautiful topo, and that got we sent that back to the guys in Mexico.
I think it definitely depends where you are, isn't it? Because I know when I've been climbing the Alps, like huts have the Guardians sometimes have little ring binders, don't they, of routes that have been put up and that kind of thing. So yeah, definitely depends where you are. So I think we're kind of running out of time now, but Kai's just put on some interesting or some good beta about Mexico. Thanks very much. So I think we'll leave it there, but there is some contact info for Sally at the end. So if you've got any questions about anything related to climbing, give her a message. But thank you so much, Sally, for joining us. It's been absolutely amazing. And yeah, do read Sally's articles on the website as well. So yeah, thank you.
Thanks so much, Sally. And I just want to talk about the next set of talks that are coming up. Hopefully you guys can join. It seems like certainly, at least in the UK, for the next 6 weeks, we are going to have lots of time at home. So hopefully the sort of 19th of December, you'll join us for Solani Mead's talk, where she is sharing stories gathered from a diverse group of women to just better understand the barriers to uptake in high mountain adventures. And we hope that you will join the discussion so that we can figure out what we're going to do as a community to sort of increase diversity within our group as a starting point. The talk after that on the 2nd of February is Slovenian Adventures with Michaela Tozek. She's going to share stories and lessons from her adventures in the Julian and Chemic Alps of Slovenia. And then on the 16th of February, we've got Alpine Winter Climbing with Suzanne Almasari. She's going to speak about the power of belief to move mountains of self-doubt into motivation and achieve your adventure goals. And then we're going to round out the winter series of Alpine Stories with Kath James, who did a wonderful talk over the summer. And this time she's going to be speaking about winter climbing in the UK. So she's going to share her love of Scottish winter climbing, which is not everybody's favorite. So hopefully that will inspire some people. But then she's also going to share some images and stories of the elusive North Wales winter climbing, which sometimes comes in season, but it is quite rare. So we hope you join for all of those talks. Most of you know us already, you know where to find us. We're on Facebook, we're on Instagram. If you're not already signed up, sign up to the newsletter. That's where you're going to get the latest information, community updates. And then just as importantly, make sure that you follow Sally. You can follow her adventures, get in touch with her. You know, she's building her business. If restrictions are lifted and you want to go out into the mountains, Sally's definitely a great person to go with. So make sure that you check out her website, definitely start following her on social media. And we just want to say thank you, everybody. Thank you so much for joining. Crazy times, but we are looking forward to getting out on adventures with you all as soon as possible. Thanks for joining tonight, and hopefully see you in the weeks to come. Stay safe, everyone.